Welcome to the V-Cast, a Vendux podcast titled "The Next Stage CEO." Today, I'm joined by Paul Anthony Claxton, founder and general partner of Digerati Investments, based in LA. Paul is a Marine veteran and a serial entrepreneur turned AI venture capitalist, running a seed and Series A fund that backs technically elite founders building AI-first products across healthcare, infrastructure, mobility, cybersecurity, and space. He built companies without institutional backing before moving into investing, creating the reloadable note financing instrument, and lives by three words: businessman, athlete, Marine. Paul, hearty welcome to our VCast.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, total pleasure. So, Paul, you have built companies without institutional backing before becoming an investor yourself. So, what did you see from the operator's seat that made you want to allocate capital instead?
I saw a better way to what I thought was a better way to do things in terms of advancing parts of the world forward, parts of society forward, and improving our lives. And I think capital is a technology of power. It's a medium for doing that. So I needed to fulfill my purpose, not being in the Marines anymore, and I thought I could do that and serve other people as a steward and fiduciary manager of capital.
Yeah, yeah. So, speaking of the Marines, how does the Marine Code, service, accountability, mission first, actually show up in how you run Digerati day to day?
Um, a large part, I think, of what we're going to be talking about today is decision making, and
Right.
I think the answer to your question is making the right decisions for the right reasons. And so that guides my investment philosophy and everything that we do at Digerati. Which means that we have a very contrarian approach and view to how how investment capital should be conducted and deployed. Um, in the private markets, it's contrarian. It's compliant. Just because it's contrarian doesn't mean, or that it's uncommon in Western markets does not mean that it's not the right way to do things. There's a lot of, I always like to say there's a lot of different ways to get from New York to California, but no way is particularly the right way. It depends on what you have going on and how you view things, and the journey, how you view taking a journey, and so I've just seen too many. I just look at things and I'm like, why are the statistics so bad in the private capital markets, early stage entrepreneurship? Why do so many companies fail? Well, maybe we need to look at not what everybody is saying or what everyone is doing, but maybe we obviously need to do something different. So, I've kind of flipped it around, and I'm trying to teach people how to look at this industry and this market and entrepreneurship differently.
Critical. Well, so what is the core thesis behind Digerati, and what does an ideal technically elite founder look like to you?
The core thesis is really how do we create companies that can create measurable impact. So I like to use the phrase inventing necessity. So society doesn't really know what they need. You know, we don't know what we need until it's presented to us, and then we find out how that fits into our life and how it compares to what what kind of capability we have, and we're like, wow, we see how this new technology can make our lives better, and then it becomes a need. So like I always say, as far as Digerati is concerned, we have to invent necessity. So say for example with AI, there's AI is taking jobs, but that line has been said for every industrial or technological revolution. Oh, the cars are gonna take our jobs. Ubers are gonna take the jobs, and it hasn't. It's expanded opportunity, and it's just simply redefined how the economy works. So the economy is like it's like a rolling ocean tide. So no grain of sand ever lands in the same place, right? So the economy is kind of like the same. We're never in the same spot, because if we are, then we're falling behind as a human species, right? So we have to. It's imperative for the survival of humans to invent necessity, and we can go more into the evolutionary, psychological, sociological aspects of that. But that is one thing that's important. The other thing that is important with regards to technically elite founders, technically elite founders to us are more than just a business person, more than just an engineer, more than just a CEO. Someone who is technically elite is someone that is so technically elite is a metaphor. So we like to say that someone is technically elite as a qualification. So you are absolutely elite, isn't technically elite. Does that make sense? So we're
Yeah.
not talking about technology being technologically elite. We're saying you're absolutely elite, right? In all aspects, in terms of character, integrity, hunger for knowledge, wanting to execute, and having a sense of urgency about things, having a sense of humility, and so forth. It's much less about the market opportunity many times for us, and it's much more about the person.
Yeah, yeah, understand. And today is a particularly poignant day out there in the markets and in innovation with SpaceX going public. And to your point about the invention of necessity, there's probably a lot of new people thinking, I got to get to Mars. That didn't exist a few years ago. Um, So take us back to launching the fund, Paul. The first LPs, the first checks, the first wins. What did year one really look like for you at the most core level?
So, um, first off, it's really hard for emerging fund managers. Um, it's even hard for existing established fund managers, but it's really hard for emerging fund managers. And I think whenever I'm a junior, I would call myself a junior in the space, an up and comer, um, doing what everybody else is doing. It doesn't always work. It doesn't work for a lot of people, and I just don't want to be that crap in the bucket. So, I prefer to blaze my own path and look at, what are the things that people haven't done. What's outside of the SOP, but still, like not being a loose cannon in this industry, but what's outside of the SOP in terms of building funds, and how can I get there, through alternative means, right? So the traditional fund starts out with the general approach of, um, do we have any internal capital that we can use to set this thing up, or do we have existing legal institutional relationships that can help us set up the fund. So the idea is to kind of get soft commitments, and once you have soft commitments, and then go set up the fund. So we had institutional multi-billion-dollar law firm set up our fund because we had soft commitments, right? And so, I mean, it's like $100K to set up a VC fund, you know. So we did that, and then we went to go execute our soft commitments and conduct our capital calls. Now all that sounds easy, but it never is. So we've ran into everything that you can possibly run into, from liquidity issues and founders not being truthful, being fraudulent, that type of stuff. So I learned a lot as a first-time fund manager, and it hasn't been a walk in the park by any means. But this industry is not. It's not for the faint of heart. This is not a job or a career. I believe this is a way of life for me. I look at Warren Buffett. That guy's like 95 years old, and he still goes to work every day, because he loves it. And so I love this. I love what I do. I feel like it. This is my calling, and you do have to. I would not recommend that. If people want to, if you think you're going to make a lot of money the first time as a fund manager, you're probably not. You're probably delusional, because ideally, like, I should probably be a multi-millionaire, like freaking worth $5 million. But I've had so much money flow through. I've seen millions of dollars flow through on deals, and the wrong kind of people, doing the wrong kind of things, and so it's, if you can't, as a fund manager or even as an entrepreneur, if you don't have the stomach, the iron gut for that, I do not recommend that you get into this industry, because it's literally war. So, that's at a very high level, respecting confidentialities. That was what my first year was like. It was like being dropped into the battlefield zone.
You are, yes. You're touching on kind of the next area of conversation here, which is the
Okay.
reality of scaling. So,
Yeah.
just in terms of the people, where have you found people who can do both the diligence, the due diligence, the rigor of due diligence, and the founder facing work, and have any hires backfired, and lessons learned there and decisions made?
I just want to make sure I understand your question, Andrew. Um, have we had any difficulties with hires? And then also, how do we conduct diligence?
Yeah, in terms of finding the right people to do both the diligence rigor and the founder facing work,
Mm-hmm.
and then about the hiring of those people, the finding of them. Have any backfired, and why,
Oh,
and what did you learn?
yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely, some have backfired. But I look at I look at people as, how do I say this? So I look at, everyone has value, first off. You can learn something from the best of people and the worst of people. Um, and, I got to say, like, it can always be worse, but it can always be better, right? Like, so glass half full, half empty. But, like, I try to keep my glass all the way full. But I wouldn't be where I'm at today. If I didn't have those people. I wouldn't have had some of the success that I've had if, I didn't have those people, but I also wouldn't have learned many of the lessons that I've been so fortunate to have these failures, because I've learned, um, And so, falling in love with failure is, it's an interesting thing. But I'd say my biggest joy has come from like overcoming and bouncing back from setbacks and failures. But absolutely, I've put my trust in the people, and from our from our investors, limited partners, to strategic partners, to internal team members. And absolutely, there's been some situations that haven't worked out, unfortunately. So I think, with regards to venture capital, I've learned that it is very hard to find people that have the aptitude for venture capital and have the hunger for this space. Um, and one of the worst things that you can have in an early stage fund is like massive turnover, right? And so I've kept my team, because they're good people. And they're dependable. If I need something, they're going to be there. And those are the people that you need, in the venture capital space, and people that want to be there for the right reasons. And so I don't just hire people in the Digerati Investments. I actually have an institutional diligence firm. So Reciprocity ROI is our due diligence and administration firm. We work with Digerati's investment mandate, but we also work with a number of other VC firms and their investment mandates as our co-investors to evaluate market opportunities. And we have a bunch of different funding programs and whatnot, and banking partnerships and whatnot. So, for anyone that wants to maybe work with us, or they would go through reciprocity, and that would be the proving ground. So I wouldn't put these people on the front line. They have to, prove themselves and earn the right to, be in the VC spectrum. There's a statistic that says it's harder to get into venture capital and make it in venture capital than it is a pro sports team, which is pretty insane. So, not anybody can just get into this, and it's not about where you went to school. It's not about what your IQ is or any of that nonsense. It's about what's in here, and what your desire is. That's it. And so if you got the desire, then you can survive in this industry.
Yeah, I love it. So you talk about just a minute ago. You talk about a bunch of failures that you've experienced. Can you
Hmm.
share a little bit about one of those, and it's just one or two things about a lesson learned about that failure?
That's interesting. Yeah. I'd say the biggest thing that I've learned um, throughout my time and whatnot is people don't do things for, and again, we're going back to decision making. It like, why do people do things?
Hmm.
What's the catalyst? What's the springboard, or the nitrous that pushes people faster in a certain direction? Um, and I was just talking with someone the other day. People don't do things because it's necessarily the right thing to do, or because it's pure or whatever. That doesn't mean that people are inherently bad or anything like that. It just means that from sociological perspectives and group psychology, humans are naturally inclined to follow the flock. So if they see, and that's a safety thing. That's a safety thing. That's a fight or flight thing, right? And so if we see a lot of people doing something, regardless of whether it's right or wrong, we're gonna do that, right? I probably do that. I try not to, because I try to be very conscious about my decisions. But that's kind of, what people do. So, you know, with that being said, like, common sense and logic um, doesn't move people in a certain direction. Um, and money does not buy loyalty. I've had $500 million net worth individual in my network out of the UK. And I thought over time, because I had known this guy for like 4 years, and I thought over time, like we had grown to become friends, and I went to his wedding and whatnot, and I had just been burnt too many times, and I'm like, how can this guy be verified through two different prestigious London law firms and not and be at the network that he is and not back me up? Like, you know what I mean? So it was always me coming up with money. It was always me, investing money or sourcing money for deals that we were a part of or joint ventures that we were a part of. And finally, I just had enough. I've been burned too many times, and I found out, wow, this guy doesn't truly have my back like he says he does. So, I would say for people looking at, who are you going to associate with in business, don't let money be the driving factor, because it does not buy loyalty, right? And understand that when you're dealing with people in business, understand what the reasoning is behind their decision making, right? Like, are they making decisions for the right reasons off of logic, or are they emotionally attached to something? So you have to work with people to kind of break down that emotion and ensure that they understand the logic behind the situation, right? Because if you don't get them to understand the logic behind the situation, then they're going to have emotion involved, and the deal is eventually going to go wrong or by the wayside. Does that make sense? So because they're emotionally attached, and when the deal doesn't work out, they're going to get a temper tantrum. They're going to be emotionally disturbed, and then that's when you have things like lawsuits or and disagreements, and people want to fire people or badmouth people and so forth. So that's a story about what I've learned.
Great. Thanks, Paul. So let's pivot for a couple minutes around growth inflection points. So I'm interested to know where you have seen real bottlenecks in your business: deal flow, fundraising, a diligence capacity, or portfolio support. Where are the bottlenecks? Where have the bottlenecks been to growth?
As far as the VC and the VC firm is concerned, a big bottleneck is quality founders. I'll just be honest, like, is quality founders, and I call this the Silicon Valley plague or epidemic. So since the dot-com era, Silicon Valley has done a very, very good job of um, creating this illusionary world, like that you create a pitch deck and then you go automatically pitch for funding, right? And they're really good at using rhetoric and media. Just social media is really good at this. The internet's really good at not focusing on the failure rates of the industry, which are like high as heck, and blasting like the success of headline companies, unicorn companies, and talking about the success, but not talking enough about the failure and lessons learned and why, how people should maybe, or founders could look at things differently, right? How do you be a quality founder? How do you stop thinking like a founder, think more like an investor, and so forth? And then just, talking, getting into like valuation psychology and valuation theory, right? And talking about the science behind venture capital and the history of venture capital. Like, do people even know what venture capital is or where it came from? Or it used to be called at venture capital, right? And so when it was originally, because people saw it as an adventure, and people were crossing massive oceans and building cities, and so it was an adventure. But then they made it more, more like an institutional framing, right? Like, so then they dropped the AD and they said venture, right? But you gotta look at the history of venture capital, and how that's changing over time. And a lot of people are kind of stuck in the early 2000s with like safe notes, which the SEC has warned against, against the pitfalls of safe notes. And they're kind of stuck in this equity cap table mindset, and actually the industry is pulling the other way. We see venture debt increasing. We see other investment instruments coming out, like the reloadable note or et cetera. So, those are the things that I see in terms of drawbacks, is quality founders that understand what they're getting into when they're raising capital, and not really thinking they know, Dunning-Kruger effect or superiority complex effect of thinking they know, but they don't really know. And so I do this every day. I talk to hundreds of founders a month. So, and the founders that, even if they don't know, right, the ones that are willing to listen are few and far between, and so that's not a good fit for us, because it is going to be a several-year partnership, a multi-year partnership, and we're going to be business partners. And we're not just putting money into the company, but we're putting money in a company that has sales, like SAIL. So sales in terms of like money that has muscle, not just sitting there on the cap table doing nothing. So that's a big bottleneck for us, is the way that the market thinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on the organizational side, beyond the founders, what about on the organizational side internally in terms of operations? What kind of organizational gaps have showed up as Digerati has grown? Just let's say past the first few people.
Mm-hmm. One of the probably the biggest gaps that we have, and there are not many, but I think we could probably be stronger, on the branding and partnership side, and the AI side of things. So, a couple of things. So, to me, today the best VC firms are going to be great. They're going to be great at marketing within a SEC compliant format. They're going to be, so underneath that marketing, they're going to be thought leaders within their space. I see a lot of VC firms that don't do any thought leadership. It's just crazy to me. So they need to be really good at that. And then partnerships, because partnerships are really where it's at in the VC front. Like if you're a VC and you're going to lead, let's just say $1 million round and put 300,000 in, you have to be able to, fill out that round, right? Because maybe if you're doing a seat round, and you're going to commit, like I said, 300,000 of $1 million, but you should be able to fill that round out, because you don't want to be the only person or entity doing the seat round. You want other co-investors to come in. So any good VC firm should have an upstream, downstream list of partners that they can co-invest with, right? And then that's what I call creating harmonious cap tables. Because I tell you, like, a lot of deals actually blow up. A lot of rounds actually blow up, not because of the founders, but because of investors, And so you have dissension on the cap table, and then you got an investor that wants to maybe like bullhorn the cap table, and they got like really, really aggressive rights because maybe they didn't de-risk the deal properly, so they wanted like a higher liquidation preference, things like that. And then you got too aggressive of rights, and then that kind of turns it turns it's very unattractive to other investors that could want to come in, and because the rights are set too strong. Does that make sense? So things like that. That's a big gap. A lot of this is less of a finance, at the early stage, and it's much more of architecting deals than anything. So I'd say if we had any gaps, those would probably be it. So partners, and then again, like branding, right? Like and we're more branded than most VC firms, but we do way more like branding, but we could do more, and we could have more partners, because the more we have there, the more partners we have, and the more marketing we do to get those partners, the more effective we're going to be for our portfolio companies.
Can you hear me clearly? Because I think your network is a little scratchy there.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Okay.
Hello?
So, Paul, just in terms of the senior leadership topic. So, when you're looking for help for like impact players, where do you find senior leadership? And do you do that? Do you bring on senior people to help you? The platform, the operating leads, partner level, etc., or specific functional roles, maybe sales or finance or product.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing that. So, in terms of expanding our team, we generally, like I said, we keep Digerati pretty set as it is. If generally, when a fund gets set up, they're allocated for the management fees over the course of that fund life cycle, right? And so when the next fund happens, then that's time to expand and hire. But generally speaking, once a fund is set up, it's set. You don't touch it. So we're actually able to expand through Reciprocity, our institutional diligence and administration firm. And we are expanding. We've got Shane Pogue, who is our due diligence and risk management. He worked at the diligence. He headed up due diligence for Fidelity Investments before going out and launching his own diligence and risk management firm. And now that firm is called Aegis RSI. And then he works with us and supporting us as well. And then we just brought on, we're just in the process of bringing on a gentleman. His name is Cisco Mentorne. He is a former Obama presidential administration and U.S. Congress. So he works with us on kind of like navigating the federal pathways for our dual use mandate. And then we do quite a bit of work with universities. So Christopher Hines heads up our university alliances and partnerships. So and we're always looking to expand through Reciprocity, where we can expand our capability or look for great partners. We just signed a partnership with a company out in Silicon Valley, competitor to Scale AI. I have to keep the partnership confidential, but if you know what Scale AI does, then you've got an idea. So there we have data licensing agreement. It's a data licensing partnership where we can work with startups to license their data through our work, through our partnership, and we'll pay them for that data. So it's good, for a few $100,000, for startups, data bank or data infrastructure to build better AI models. So we can do that where it's compliant and so forth. And there's other things that we're looking at consistently.
Excellent. Paul, just on the AI topic for a second, as AI reshapes both, your portfolio, your workflow, the range of opportunities out there, how is that changing the talent and leadership that you need and foresee needing?
So I think it is. I look at what we use AI for, right? A lot of it is eliminating administrative work, right? And so uh, I have a little bit of a law background. I majored in criminal law, but I've also been doing contract law and contract negotiation long enough that a lot of times I don't even need a lawyer, right? Especially with the help of uh, systems like ChatGPT, et cetera. I don't use a lot of AI systems, but they've certainly and I don't use a lot of AI systems so that my personal profile, my data is protected. And then also the AI systems get to know me better and stuff. So I don't go throwing, a lot of data, into different places. But, I use, excuse me. I use several administrative platforms such as LLMs, note-taking assistants, um, deck creation, or like pitch deck creation, document creation, that type of stuff. So that eliminates a lot of hand holding as far as administrative is concerned. Um, also a lot of um, legal things that I might need help with. I can usually get answers to it. Um, so yeah, and then with regards to AI and um, really being able to monitor the performance of companies, we built our own AI prototype. It's called Scale Curves, and so that's meant to monitor a company's uh, monitor the company's performance in real time. So, and I think the best investment firms are going to have some kind of proprietary AI system as a differentiator.
That's really interesting. Maybe next time I want to come back and learn more about that. Um, in terms of the future vision. So where do you want Digerati to be in the next couple of years? And what has to be true inside the firm to make that happen?
I would like Digerati to probably in the next few years be on its second fund. Um, and for that to be true, obviously we need to show real-time liquidity and distributions paid in with our current fund, right? So we need to show early stage success, exits on the horizons, and I think that's possible. So I think with AI, we're seeing more and more companies um, get to like higher, like real valuations, right? Like we're seeing more and more companies get to real valuations much faster. And I think AI is speeding that up. So that tells me that um, exits are going to happen a lot faster.
Um, for a founder investor that's still doing so much, uh, so much yourself, so much for themselves, for you, what's the one piece of advice you wish that you would have had earlier?
So I'd say the piece of advice I wish I'd had earlier would have been um, just in general with life. Um, start early. Don't wait too long. Um, Life kind of forced me into entrepreneurship, where I had enough of corporate. So I got laid off from my ERP project manager position, and I just had enough of corporate, and so I said I'm taking a plunge, like, because you know if I'm gonna get laid off, or if I'm gonna you know uh, be in a position where I'm not getting paid, I'd rather do that to myself than have someone else do it for me. So I decided to take control. But I wish I had done that earlier. I'm almost 45. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was like 34, and I spent 10 years in the Marines. So I got out of the Marines when I was almost 29. Um, and then I spent like 6 years in corporate, but I did learn a lot in corporate. But I still kind of wish maybe I had just immediately gone into entrepreneurship. But you don't know what you don't know when you're at younger years in life. And but I will say this, I'm glad I did when I did, because the push for me was not just getting laid off, but I probably about a year before that, I was working for a company called American Cyber Systems in downtown Minneapolis, and I seen my colleague walk into the office. He's in his mid 50s, and he just he just had that midlife crisis thing going on, and it was like a Tuesday morning, and he just slammed his desk on his briefcase on his desk, and he just sat down, and I just looked at him, and he looked so unhappy, and I was like, wow, like I can't be that in 20 years, so I got to do something different. So I've been trying to do something different, and you know, something that makes sense, and it's worthwhile, and that I can look back on, and have stories to tell, and hopefully have helped a lot of people out instead of sitting in a cubicle for 9 to 5, under a company's dictatorship, and that's all you can do. That's all you can do. That's your life. But for me, I've been to Australia. I've been to what other country? I'm going to Africa soon. I've been all over the U.S. I've been to Canada, all within the past 2 years. Ireland. I lived in Ireland for 4 years, from 2020 to 24. The UK. Yeah. So, and I've only been able to do that because of entrepreneurship. I've got a house in Ireland. My girlfriend is from Ireland, and it's been pretty amazing. It's had a lot of ups and downs, but I wouldn't want it any other way. So I would suggest, not belaboring over things too much, and I would suggest that to myself. Yes.
I think a lot of people would very much appreciate that kind of advice. Start earlier. Um, Maybe the last quick question: if you could redo a decision that you made about structuring the firm or structuring the fund, well, is there a redo decision? Is there a decision that you would redo, and if so,
Yeah,
what was
there
the
is.
decision and why?
I think there is, but I'm not regretful. I want to make that clear. I'm not regretful. Like I said at the beginning of the call, everything comes with a silver lining. We learn from everything, but um, I would, so I've always said that, people who become billionaires or trillionaires in Elon Musk's case, SpaceX just went public and he's a trillionaire now. So that, I mean, that's stupid money. So, um, but people that became billionaires and whatnot, they didn't become billionaires because people were nice and fair to them. So, accepting that that money is mean, and that people are not going to be nice to you. That's just the way business goes, and just accept that. And just so from a stakeholder, from a decision maker standpoint, I've always tried to be fair, but what I realized, I've had that thrown back in my face. And what I've come to realize is there's no fairness in business, both on the receiving side and the giving side. There's no fairness. That's an illusion. Everything has to be earned, and that's the only time you get fairness. And so, my previous firm, my previous VC firm, I brought because it was a concept, it was an idea in my head, and the firm had not yet been formed, but it was still my idea, my vision, right? But I said, if I'm going to bring someone in, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to make them a 50-50 partner, you know? And, that we're not partners today, you know? So I think he needed, I think him and many other people, when it's something that I started, even if it hasn't fully been built, even if it's just still a concept and I'm asking someone to come in, they still need to earn the right to enter my vision, right? And I don't think that 50-50 works out very well, because you're going to have disagreements. And at the end of the day, someone's got to drive that ball forward, right? Someone's got to drive and so somebody has to be responsible, and those expectations have to be set from the very beginning. Because, at the end of the day, like, I've been in situations where I have been 50-50, and like everybody comes to me for the responsibility, or vice versa. And so 50-50 doesn't really matter to your customers or to lawyers when it comes to how they see things. If they see that you're majorly responsible, then they're going to come to you. So, and the buck has always seemed to stop with me. People always come to me, and I don't know if that's because I'm type A or I'm a Marine, or they see me as dominant, or I don't know what that is, but I can't do the 50-50 thing anymore. I won't do it. And so as a fund manager, I will only be a solo GP. I am a solo GP, and for anybody that wants to participate in the general partnership with me, they can start out as a venture partner or a principal and work their ways. They have to prove it. So, and as one of my old business partners said, if you're helping me make money, then you're family to me. So, help me make money, and then, we can open up doors. Help me make money or save time, and we can open up doors. But if you're taking money from me, or if you're taking my time, then that's a problem. So, yep.
Well stated. Love it. Thank you very much, Paul. Yeah, again, thank you for being with us today. Here it's a candid look at what it takes to build a firm from the inside, and the decisions that every growth stage leader eventually faces. When to keep doing it yourself, when to build the system, and when to bring in leadership. Paul, where should listeners go to learn more about you and Digerati Investments?
Well, I'm pretty easy to find. Um, I'm very public. I do a lot of podcast interviews. So Paul Anthony Claxton. I use my full first and middle name, because there's another famous Paul Claxton. I'm the other famous one. Well, not famous, but well known. But there's another famous Paul Claxton. He's a 60-year-old something white Caucasian golfer, and that's not me. I'm of a darker complexion. So yeah, you'll find me. There's another Paul Claxton out of Memphis. He's a gospel music singer, but I have a bit more of an internet presence than him. So I'm the only Paul venture capitalist Claxton. So you can go find me on LinkedIn, all over online. You can also go to paulclaxton.io, which is my website. Through those two platforms, my website and LinkedIn, you'll find Digerati Investments, you'll find Reciprocity, and everything else that I've been involved in.
Excellent. Paul Anthony Claxton, thank you
Yes, sir.
once again for being on our VCast today, the Next Stage CEO.